بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما إنك أنت العليم الحكيم اللهم آمين وبعد. In our last lesson about the common mistakes in Salah, we took three masail. The first one, we said the prohibition to read any Quran behind the Imam. It is not allowed to recite any Quran in a jahri prayer. Maghrib, Fajr, Isha, Taraweeh, any prayer where the Imam is reading out loud, it is haram to read anything after the Imam except Surah Al-Fatiha. It is not allowed. It's in a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ was once leading the prayers, narrated in Abu Dawood, and he said that a man was reciting the Quran behind the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet said, who is challenging me with the recitation of the Quran? Right? Who's reciting after me? And he said, don't do that, except with the Fatiha. And so we said the basis of this ruling is وَإِذَا قُرِئَ الْقُرْآنِ فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ. When the Quran is recited, listen to it attentively. And so based on this, our scholars conclude this verse is mandatory in Salah. Outside of Salah, they say it's proper adab and recommended when you hear the Quran outside of Salah that you stop talking. That's because the ayah says when you hear the Quran, listen attentively. So whenever the Quran is recited, the command of Allah is to listen attentively. In Salah, mandatory. Outside of Salah, recommended. And so that is the fiqh of the ayah. The second mas'ala we took is we mentioned that a person should beautify their voice with the Quran. And this, as we said, is a sunnah in the jahri prayers, Fajr, Maghrib, Isha. And we said that this is something we need to make a habit of. A lot of people think only the Qurra can beautify their voices. No, everybody can beautify their voice. Allah has given all of us our voices, and we can all make it beautiful as best as we can. And so we should all teach ourselves to beautify our voices with the tilawah of the Quran in the jahri prayers. The third mas'ala we took, and this is we mentioned this is a khilaf mas'ala. This is the issue of when you read quietly in Salah, you read the Fatiha, you read your tashahhud, you read your tasbihat, and so on. We mentioned that in the Shafi'i and the Hanbali school, they require that you whisper your recitation enough for you to hear yourself. Just a teeny bit, a tad bit for you to hear yourself. So there should be a little bit of whispering going on. It shouldn't be just lip movement. In their two schools, Imam Shafi'i and Imam Ahmad rahimahumullah, lip movement is insufficient, and Salah is not valid with only lip movement. Imam Malik rahimahullah, he validates. He says Salah is valid with lip movement. And so he says even if there's no sound, as long as the lips and the tongue are moving, the Salah is valid. And so with that we mentioned it's important to get in the habit of when praying Salah to whisper quietly without disturbing the people around us, quietly to whisper our recitation and our adhkar. And so these are the three masail. A mas'ala I want to add to this, they all agree, all our scholars, reciting in your mind without your lips does not count. It doesn't count. If a person is silent in their prayer, sometimes, subhanAllah, you see it with individuals, they're just still, and their lips are not moving. And they said this Salah does not count. It is equivalent to it is equivalent to reading nothing. Right? When we say recitation, that is verbal. It has to be with the movement of the lips and the tongue, and there has to be some type of creation of sound, even if it's not pronounced, but there has to be that attempt to create that sound. So that is the next mas'ala. The mas'ala that I want to add tonight is the mas'ala of praying in congregation. There are some misunderstandings about praying in congregation. So we know the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. He says that praying in congregation is 25 times, and in other narrations 27 times more in reward than praying individually. And so this is, we know, and so the Prophet ﷺ encourages to always pray in congregation. And this is only for the fard prayers. For no other prayer, the fard prayers are the ones that these ahadith apply to. Other prayers like Salatul Eid is done in congregation, but the primary prayers that this hadith is talking about is the 5 fard prayers. outside of the fard prayers, the Prophet ﷺ actually recommended us to pray in our homes, to pray at home, to not pray in the masjid. That's the hadith. To pray your sunnah at home is the sunnah. To pray in the masjid is fine. There's no burden, but the preferred is what? To pray your sunnah at home. But the 5 fard prayers should be prayed in the masjid. But going back, the hadith mentioned that praying with a jama'ah has 27 times more reward than praying by yourself. The question comes, is this reward only attainable in the masjid? Are you guys with me? Because the hadith mentioned praying in congregation. How about if you prayed in congregation at home? How about if you prayed in congregation at your workplace? Or in your market? Or wherever else you might be? Do you get the 27 hasanat? And the answer is yes. This hadith of 27 rewards is not limited to the masajid. It can be attained by praying in congregation anywhere. Of 25 to 27 hasanat. And when we say 25 to 27 hasanat, praying in congregation is equivalent to praying that salah 25 to 27 times. So we pray the Isha in Jama'ah. That Isha is equivalent to 27 nights of Isha. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala, we ask Allah to accept. Right? And so that's the reward. Like it's significant, right? It's not just something you overlook. One of the scholars, he used to be very passionate about praying in Jama'ah. And so one time he missed Jama'ah, Salah in Jama'ah. What did he do? He started praying that Fard Salah 27 times. Because he didn't want to miss out on the ajr of it 27 times. And this was his individual practice. The fuqaha discussed should a person do this or not, and it's a bigger discussion. But this shows you like how much concern, right, our predecessors had for praying in congregation. And so you can attain this reward by praying with any congregation in any space. Number 2, what is the definition of jama'ah? And jama'ah, its minimum is just 2 people. If the person prays with a second individual, they have attained the reward of jama'ah. And the more the people, the better. The Prophet ﷺ in the hadith, he says, صلاة الرجل مع الرجل أزكى من صلاته وحده وصلاة الرجل مع الرجلين أزكى من صلاته مع الرجل أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام, that a man praying with another man, that their prayer is more pure than a man praying by himself. And a man praying with 2 people, their prayer is more pure than a man praying just with one individual. So the bigger the jama'ah, the greater the reward. But the minimum jama'ah is what? Just two people. I want to address one last topic, and this isn't a fiqhi mas'ala, but it's more of a tarbiyah issue, a topic of tarbiyah. And so what is tarbiyah? Tarbiyah is how you cultivate iman and Islam in our lives and in the lives of those around us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam to pray salah, to command his family to pray. وَأْمُرْ أَهْلَكَ بِالصَّلَاةِ وَاسْتَبِرْ عَلَيْهَا. Command your family to pray, to adhere to the prayer and be patient with this. Right? And so there's a command, explicit command to the Messenger ﷺ to command his family to pray. The Prophet ﷺ in his sunnah, he said, لا تجعلوا بيوتكم قبورا. He said, don't make your homes a cemetery. Do not turn your homes into a cemetery. How do you turn your home into a cemetery? By not praying salah in your home. That is so, the salah in the house brings life to the home, it brings nur, it brings barakah to the home. And no salah in the home is equivalent to turning the home into a cemetery, void of Allah's remembrance. And so, we mentioned that for the fard prayers, they should be in the masjid. But if you're not in the masjid, pray jama'ah in your homes with your families. And make that a habit in your home. And it has been proven that a family who adheres to salah jama'ah in their home is blessed in their deen and in their akhlaq and in their dunya. They're united as a family. They're more happy with one another. They're more connected with one another. But a family that doesn't gather for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and worship Allah together, they're bound to have fitan fall upon them. Confusion, conflict, stress, anger, frustration, and so on and so forth. And so the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ is very beautiful. He says, don't make your homes a cemetery. Meaning, do not let your homes die. Right? And how does a person die? This isn't a physical death, but it's a spiritual death. It's a death of the heart, of the soul. And so a lot of us, we complain, and we hear this often, and I conclude with this, my children are not praying, my children are not listening. And the first thing I ask, did you normalize Salah in your home? Did you pray Jama'ah with your kids? Did you teach them to pray Jama'ah together as they, in the years that you raised them? And oftentimes the answer is no, we didn't. It wasn't a priority. Maybe folks prayed, some didn't pray, and if folks prayed, everybody just prayed on their own. But there wasn't this emphasis of praying together, Jama'ah as a family. And so in this Ramadan, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, and in the coming days and weeks and years, let's adhere to establishing Jama'ah in our homes. For the fard prayers if we're not in the masjid. And if we are in the masjid, even gathering to study the book of Allah, recite the Quran, make dhikr of Allah, all of these things are highly recommended and especially important for the development of Iman in the hearts of children. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless our homes, to bless our families, to grant us understanding. Allahumma ameen wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Yes, brother.
You said we shouldn't recite Quran when Imam is in front.
When Imam is reciting, correct. He's reciting out loud. Do not recite Quran when the Imam is reciting out loud. Correct. Except with Fatiha.
Like if you are reciting what Imam is reciting.
It's still not allowed. It's prohibited. That's the prohibition.
Follow him.
To follow him, you cannot recite. Now, if you have a mushaf and you're following with your eyes, but you're not reading, you're just following along, that's permitted.
Even your lips.
So reciting is your lips moving. You cannot recite. You cannot recite. You have to listen. You have to listen. But you can follow the ayat with your eyes. That's permissible. And there's some athar from Sayyidina Aisha radiallahu anha that permitted that. And so that's the position of Imam Shafi'i and predominant opinion of our scholars. In the Hanafi opinion, the Hanafi school, they don't allow this at all. Even carrying the mushaf, they don't allow. So there is a position that's very strict, but wallahu alam, the position that is primarily adopted is that it's allowed, and it was a practice of Sayyidina Aisha radiallahu anha. But the using of mushaf cannot be accompanied by actually recitation of the tongue. And wallahu alam, jazakumullah khair.